behalf of the Applied Linguistics Research Lab, it's my pleasure to welcome you again for the last part of the first International Applied Linguistics Symposium. Just a reminder of some housekeeping instructions. Please keep your camera off and mic off. In case you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A. It's time for Dr. Julie's presentation. Dr. Julie's presentation is on Bedouin's dialect, an interesting topic to hear. So Dr. Julie is, please start and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today as I talk about the enregisterment of the Bedawi dialect in Heru, Saudi Arabia. I would also like to thank the PSU Applied Linguistics Lab for giving me this opportunity to participate in this symposium today. So this study was conducted in Jizan, Saudi Arabia, as part of my PhD research. Jizan is located in the southern west corner of Saudi Arabia and has a population of about 1,400,000 people. Heru is located here in the mountains and has a population of about 30,000 people. Most of the major cities of the Jizan province, are located in the plains or the coastal area, like Jizan City, Sabia, and the Jizan Economic City. The landscape of Heru is a mix of valleys and hills and steep mountain peaks reaching up to about 2,000 meters in altitude. And as you can see, houses are scattered throughout the area, leaving enough space for families to raise goats and sheep, and terraces have been built on the side of the mountains to be used for farming. This excerpt was taken from a Saudi reality TV show, which was filmed in Riyadh in 2017. A man from Jizan was visiting the show and he was describing Jizan. He says, "In fact, Jizan can be considered a continent of dialects. Every village and town has a different dialect than the other. Every town, even the villages around it, have different dialects. In Jizan, we have the Bedu, who are the people of the mountains. Their dialect is a code. No one can understand it except them." So this excerpt highlights two important aspects of Jizan that are important for this study. One is that there is a notable societal and language difference between the people living in the mountains and the people living in the plains. And additionally, those living in the mountains are called Bedu. And I want to make a note here that there is no official name for the way of speaking in the Jizan mountains. I chose to use the word Bedawi because this is how most of my research participants referred to it. However, sometimes people also called it Harubi or Jabaliya. Okay, so the aim of this research is to trace the enregisterment process of the Bedawi dialect in Heru, Saudi Arabia. One of the main theoretical assumptions this study is based on is that studying a language is more than a linguistic endeavor. So the well-known pioneers of social linguistics and dialectology in the UK and Canada, Chambers and Truggle, state in their book, Dialectology, language is not a particularly linguistic notion at all. And they point out that what dialectologists and linguists can study and document are linguistic features, their distribution in a population, and the context of their use. And what they find is there is a range of linguistic variation, not clearly defined borders between languages and dialects. And in order to name a language, we actually must ignore the facts that we observe, such as language variation, and we must add boundaries where they don't actually exist. So this is not simply describing, it is creating something new. And in this sense, dialects and languages are social constructs that are connected with social identities or geographic regions or personas. So for example, in America, we have country or we have Southern. These are dialects that are connected to ideology or to identities or personas, to a persona. And then in Saudi, we have Najdi and Hijazi. These are dialects connected to a region, to a location. So in this study, I use a theoretical framework of enregisterment. This is the process of how linguistic features become linked to social meaning. And it was first proposed by Aga when he traced the emergence and spread of the British variety received pronunciation, and he illustrated how it became linked with prestige. He said the main mechanism for the enregisterment of linguistic features is discursive practices. John Stone builds on Aga's work and breaks down the enregisterment process into 5 parts. A, one or more linguistic form is registered with. B, a context, a culturally relevant category or action or identity. By C, someone experiencing the sign. In terms of D, some set of ideas in which linking A with B makes sense. Because of E, a set of social and historical exigencies that give rise to metapragmatic practices. So the questions I'll answer in this presentation are: what linguistic form or forms are enregistered? What identity is linked with the linguistic forms? By whom and to whom is it enregistered? What are the ideologies that connect language to identity? What are the historical and social events giving rise to the discursive practices that have been enregistered, that have enregistered Bettaway? Okay, so data for this study was collected in the form of field notes, participant observation, recordings of interviews, and casual conversations. I lived in Heru for 3 years and spent most of my time with 6 families. 16 participants were recruited for the recordings. Okay, for the data analysis, I coded the recordings and field notes for themes, and I analyzed the discourse about language and identity. So first question, what linguistic forms or forms are enregistered? Okay, so one of the most salient features of the Bedawi dialect is the use of cha instead of ka. So for example, in Heru, people say abucha instead of abuk for your father, or they say achol instead of akul, he ate, or they say chafe instead of kaif, which means how. And although I'm sure there's definitely more features besides the cha sound, for this study, I'm only going to mention this feature. Okay, so this is an excerpt that was taken from a conversation I had with my neighbors. We were talking about how children speak like their parents, and then they remembered their friend Amal, who actually speaks differently. So this is the Arabic transcription. Here's the English translation. Okay, Nora. I have a friend Amal. She is Herubi, but she doesn't speak Herubi. Her sisters speak Herubi, and her brothers speak Herubi, and her father speaks Herubi. But if she comes to us, she doesn't speak Herubi. Because why? She said, I don't like the Heru dialect. She says, mimicking Amal, you are cha and cha and cha. She's embarrassed of our dialect. For example, when I say, how are you in our dialect to this Amal, she says, mimicking Amal with a high-pitched voice, no, what are you doing speaking like this? I don't know this. She doesn't talk like us, but she understands our dialect. Julie, look, her friends are Hadariyat, people in the cities, from Riyadh and from Taif, and from there. But if someone asks where she is from, she's embarrassed and doesn't say Harub. And then I ask, why doesn't she want? And she says, Nora says, Julie, we are Bedawi. She doesn't want to become Bedawi. Okay, so Nora, in this excerpt, Nora reports that Amal uses the cha sound to refer to the way of speaking in Heru. And the cha sound in Jazan has reached what Labov describes as a stereotype, where a linguistic form can be taken out of its natural occurring context to be used to evoke a social identity. So the cha sound alone can be used to evoke Bedu identity. So what identity is linked with the linguistic form? Okay, so we see at the end of this excerpt that Amal doesn't want to speak Bedawi because she doesn't want to become Bedu. So the way of speaking in Heru is registered with Bedu identity. But this raises the question, what is Bedu identity? So it's important to note and to point out that Bedu in Jazan has a different meaning than it does in the rest of the Arabic-speaking world, where Bedu often refers to nomadic people who traditionally lived in the desert. So this picture is an iconic representation of Bedu identity in Jazan. Okay, we have the mountains. This is an important aspect of Bedu identity, representing a particular lifestyle. The clothing, this is important for Bedu identity, the wizara, the flower headband, and you can't see it, but he has a jambia or knife on his belt. So in Jazan, Bedu identity is related to a lifestyle that's unique to the Jazan mountains, and it's defined in opposition to Hadar. Okay, so here's a summary of some of the themes that I found in my data about how people defined Bedu in opposition to Hadar in Jazan. All right, so the Bedu, they own goats and sheep, the Hadar don't. The Bedu live in the mountains, the Hadar don't. The Bedu have a simple life and traditions. The Hadar have a lot of parties and visit with people and have big houses. The Bedu are self-sufficient and free, meaning their livelihood comes from their animal husbandry and their subsistence farming, and they own their land. Whereas the Hadar have to have a job and they must rent a house. So by who and to whom is Bedawi registered? So different people interpret linguistic features differently depending on the ideological meaning they are drawing from. So Cha is not a unique feature to Heru or to Jazan. So in Bahrain, it indexes Baharna villages. In Jordan, it indexes the Harani dialect. And in Palestine, it indexes ruralness. But in Jazan, you see it indexes or it's registered with Bedu identity. So what are the ideologies that connect language to identity? So the process of linguistic differentiation described by Irvine and Gall is useful to understanding this. They explained this as the means by which people construct ideological representations of differences in linguistic practices. So the significance of linguistic differentiation is embedded in the politics of a region and its observers. So the ideology or set of beliefs in Jazan that society is divided between Bedu and Hadar is mapped onto linguistic differences. Like as if the differences in language is seen as a manifestation of contrasting social categories. And there's three semiotic processes that work together: iconization, fractal recursivity, and erasure. Iconization is when a linguistic feature or linguistic features that index social groups appear to be iconic representations of them, as if a linguistic feature somehow depicted a social group's inherent nature or essence. So Bedawi has been iconicized with the characteristics of old-fashioned and undeveloped. Most of the people, so this is an example of someone, he said, most of the people who travel outside of Heru to Riyadh, to the eastern region, they speak another dialect there, maybe classical Arabic. So when they come back to Heru, they try to speak classic Arabic. They say we should not speak our dialect, it is old-fashioned. So here, speaking this way makes the person old-fashioned. Another example of how it's iconized with undeveloped is this one woman told me, she actually was telling me she doesn't speak Bedawi. And so I asked her why. She says, maybe because I go out a lot at the college, there are people from all the tribes like Fifi and Ghazwani. My colleagues, one is Fifi and one is Ghazwani. Even though they are Bedu, they don't speak Bedawi. In the end, they speak like I'm speaking now, like the people of Sabia. Their speech is developed and civilized. I go to the salon, I go to many places, and yes, the dialect changes. So by describing the way that the people talk in Sabia, a city in the plains, as developed and civilized, she's implying the Bedu dialect is not. So as linguistic features are iconized with the nature of people who use them, people who want to be a certain kind of person will use a linguistic feature associated with those characteristics. So those who want to be modern will not use Bedawi, because in doing so, they believe they will be old-fashioned or undeveloped. Fractal recursivity is when opposition made at one level is projected onto another level. So the salient opposition made between Bedu and Heru, these oppositions are in turn mapped onto different places in Heru. This gives space for people to negotiate their identity, not just as Bedu or Heru, but they can be Bedu, more Bedu, or less Bedu. So here are some of the oppositions made between Heru and Bedu. They will say us versus them, here versus there, mountain versus city, mountain lifestyle versus city lifestyle, not developed, difficult language, easy language. And then in Heru, they'll talk about the Bedu and the Bedu folk, or the Bedu who are above, the Bedu higher on the mountain. Us versus them, here versus there, less Bedu, more Bedu, less difficult language, more developed, less developed. And then erasure is the process where individuals and linguistic phenomena which don't fit ideological schemes are erased or made invisible. So the categories Bedu and Heru are imagined as homogeneous. Complexity and linguistic variation within each category is ignored. So for example, when they say the Heru own goats and sheep, they're ignoring all the people who actually have sold their goats and sheep and no longer use that as a source of livelihood. And then also when they say that the Heru don't own goats and sheep, they're ignoring all the people who don't live in the mountains who still have goats and sheep. They're ignoring those people. Okay, so what are the historical and social events giving rise to the Registerment of Bettaway? Isolation, modernization, and marginalization. So isolation, historically the mountain region was isolated because of its rough terrain and it was not located on the trade routes. This gave rise to distinct linguistic features. Then modernization happened, which brought dialect contact through the internet, better roads, traveling in and out of the area. And as people in Heru come in contact with those who speak differently, they start to notice and give meaning to the linguistic differences. And at this point, their unique way of speaking becomes a resource for identity performance. Marginalization, they feel marginalized. I heard people tell me this, that they feel marginalized because of their location. It's remote, difficult to access. They talk about being underdeveloped, having unpaved roads in some areas without electricity, and the feeling of language discrimination. Okay, so marginalization creates a need for solidarity. Speakers of devalued varieties, Preston says this, the famous linguist Preston, says speakers of devalued varieties derive solidarity from their distinctive behaviors. So in response to marginalization, Bettaway has become a resource for creating solidarity. And here's some examples from my data. We still have the greeting for a certain process. You should say these. Or if you fail to say them, you are not good, you are not Bettaway. Another woman said, the Heru say numla, ant for this, but we don't say numla, ant. We say walia. Okay, or another girl said, at the time of summer, those outside of Heru, say it as harara. We say it is zahna. Okay, so the linguistic feature cha has been registered with Bedu identity by the people in Heru in terms of language ideologies of linguistic differentiation because of social and historical processes of isolation, modernization, and marginalization, giving rise to metapragmatic discourse. And language variation and change is a product of social, political, and historical factors. In the case of Bettaway in Jizan, the social and historical forces that often cause dialect leveling have had the opposite effect and have resulted in dialect enregisterment. And people draw boundaries and name languages or dialects for a number of reasons. The need for solidarity has led people in Heru to draw boundaries and name their way of speaking, Bettaway. So the implications. The Bettaway dialect is registered with Bedu identity in Jizan. More research is needed to know what other linguistic features besides cha are salient, a salient part of the dialect. And then also naming a language or dialect is in essence, naming an ideology. In the study of Arabic dialects, looking at the ideological aspect of language and asking why boundaries are placed where they are can teach us much about the social dynamics in these communities. Thank you. Here are my references. Thank you. Thank you for attending today.
We are the one to thank you for such rich presentation. Any questions? So, Dr. Julie, do you speak Arabic? And have you researched in Jazan dialect started early on before your PhD?
So yeah, so I do speak Arabic, and in Jazan, I started studying Arabic before I moved to Jazan, and then Jazan is actually, their Arabic is quite different, and even in Heru, it is quite different. I tried to learn their dialect, but it was hard.
Yeah, of course. Any questions? Did you observe much code switching among the Bedu?
Yes, definitely. And actually, that was part of the problem I actually ran into this problem in my research when I was trying to collect data. I actually wanted to describe the Bedu dialect more, but people had a hard time. If they saw my face that I wasn't Bedu, they had a hard time speaking to me in Bedu. And in any place where it was official, like a school or any kind of, or if it was like they knew it was a recording, if they knew I was recording them, they spoke more formally, or they spoke more, they call it classic, but I don't know what it would be. Just something more maybe like Riyadh. They speak in Riyadh. So.
Did you interview other people to discover if TS is unregistered?
I did, yes. And they said this is not part of their dialect. So the people outside of the mountains, it's kind of talked about. It's one of those sounds that everybody knows, that this is for the mountains. And so the people in the plains do not speak that way.
Yeah. What about ethnographic research?
Do we have any more questions from the attendees? We should close the session now.
Okay, I hear again. I think my internet might have been bad.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
We are going to hear another wonderful talk on dialects too, and this time it's for the Wasser's dialect in Dammam by Miss Hind from University of Tabuk in Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Miss Hind, and I think the floor is yours. You can start in 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Asma. Okay, I think I will start now. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today in my presentation. Today, I'm going to present part of my PhD research that was conducted 2 years ago. The title is The Case of the Dawasir in Dammam in Saudi Arabia. It is a sociolinguistic study. There will be an overview of Dammam, and I'm going to talk about the variation between Ja and Ya, and the rounding and unrounding of A. Methodology, data analysis results, along with conclusion, also will be presented in this presentation. The study investigates variation and change in the dialect of certain branches of the Dawasir who live in Dammam. Actually, there's an important theme which throws light on the dialect geography of Dammam, which is their immigration and settlement in KSA. Also, this research investigates a linguistically untouched dialect. These branches of the tribe and their migration have never been investigated before in a linguistic context. Dammam is the capital city of Eastern Province, and it sits atop one of the largest oil fields in the world. And the city was established by the advent of the Dawasir who returned from Bahrain 1923. And also Dammam is considered an important port in KSA. Now this is a map that shows KSA. Now this is Dammam and this is Bahrain. Actually their hometown was Wadi al-Dawasir. Wadi al-Dawasir witnessed many immigration waves from the people there. Certain branches of them have immigrated in many waves to Bahrain. Actually, we don't know the exact date, but the famous one was in 1845, and you can read more in Lorimer, the Directory of the Gulf, he talked also a lot about and described their life there. They stayed for a certain time in Bahrain, and they returned to the eastern part, specifically to Dammam and Khobar in 1923. The dialects, according to the categorization of Johnson 67, considered to be an Eastern Arabian dialect. Now, these are the variables that they were under investigation in my PhD thesis: the JAV variable and the long variable in word medially. The JAV variable has two variants, which is the ya, considered traditional one, or they brought it from Bahrain, as it is very, the use of ya for ja is very famous in the Gulf dialect, especially in Bahrain and Kuwait. And the ja is considered the innovative one. Variation between ja and ya, like rajal, rayal, aman, and rounding in word medially. The rounding one is the traditional one, and the unrounding is the innovative one. Like the word Khalid and Khalid, which is a name, or Rah and Rah, he has gone. The literature review for Ja and Ya, according to Cantino, 1960, there are many reflexes or variants or sound for Ja in the contemporary Arabic dialect. Also, Johnston described, Johnston 65 mentioned that this variation also can be found in Hadramaut, also in the Gulf dialect. The variation between Ja and Ya is popular in the Gulf dialect, such as Bahrain, Hall's 1980, 83, 1986, and in Kuwait, in the account of Hall's 2007 in the encyclopedia, and the phonological research done by Iman Mustafawi in about Qatari Arabic in 2006. Regarding the sociolinguistic studies, Al-Qaz and Taqi also mentioned this variation between Ja and Ya in Bahrain and Kuwait. Rounding and rounding in the literature, rounding is found in Semitic languages like Western Aramaic, Hebrew, the dialect of Palmyra. Rounding and rounding of the long vowel also can be found in many of the contemporary dialects, especially the Eastern dialect, according to An-Nasr 1993. Sibawayh described the rounding of the long vowel as tafkhim, emphasis. Emphasis can also be described as velarization. That was also described and mentioned by Davis. Shademan also spoke about that it is found in Persian language, and Bakala in his article of emphasis also mentioned this phenomenon. The methodology of my research was data were collected from 39 participants. They were audio recorded. They were divided 19 males and 20 females from the Dosari family that live in Dammam. Sociolinguistic interviews were used, and analysis was done by Arbor software. Actually, this research is based on empirical research incorporating statistical analysis, and data were analyzed through the variationist approach, which was based on the work of Labov, where he mentioned that the change on any language is not arbitrary, but it is systematic and it is structured. And it is motivated by both linguistic and social factors. And this is what I have done in my research, where I incorporated both linguistic and social factors in my research. The social factors that I studied were age, gender, social network. Age was divided into three age groups, as you can see: old, middle, young. Gender, male and female. Social network, whether the speaker social network, whether it was loose or tight. And this is the scale where I measure my social network strength. I followed Milroy and Margrain's 1980 scale, and there were 5 categories to decide whether the network of the speaker was it loose or tight. Regarding the findings of the variable ja, as I said before, that both were incorporated social and linguistic factors. The number of syllables, the preceding and the following were significant or chosen by Arbel. All of the social factors were important. Age, gender, social networks were important. But specifically for young age group, they scored 97% in using the innovative the ja, not you, and leveling out the use of yeah. Male also were found to be the leader in using the ja with 90%. Loose network, where they have their social network will be will not be limited with their relatives, found to be 94% in choosing ja, not ya. Regarding the unrounding, only the preceding sound were important. Also, again, all of the social factors were important. Again, young speakers are leading the change with 90%. But in the rounding, not only the young, also the middle age were leading the change in favoring ja, and not favoring the unrounding on and not rounding that much. Male were leading the change with 96%. Again, loose network were scoring 97% in favoring the unrounding variable. As we can see, the results show that there is an increasing tendency to use the innovative form, which are here in under study the ja and the unrounded a amongst the whole sample. Male speakers are leading the change in using the innovative variant, and this is a change from above, using the supralocal feature. The supralocal feature, or the standard, the main standard in Saudi Arabia, which prefer ja and the unrounding, according to the dialect of Riyadh in KSA. If you attend Najla Al-Ghamdi presentation, she spoke about all of these and the leveling out. Also, age was found to be significant, with the young speaker being the most advanced users. Of course, as we said that I'm speaking about dialect change and variation. So usually the young, in most of the studies, prove that young speakers are preferring the new trend. So they prefer the ja and the unrounding. And this indicates change in progress. Change in progress, or this is a trace of leveling out the traditional variant, which is the ya and the rounding. They are these traditional variants are on their way to be leveled out. Social networks, which actually the study of social network is not popular in the Arabic studies, but for me, I saw that it's very important. Also, it is turned to be significant. The use of ja and the unrounded vowel were generally found to be more advanced among closed networks. What is also important in this research, that geographically, as we know that it is very important in sociolinguistic study, the geographical border. Although Dammam is very close to Bahrain in geographically, but it is pulled more to the norm of Saudi Arabia, which prefer the ja and the unrounded variant. So this shows us the impact of the capital city and the norm, the standard or Lahja al-Bayda, that it is popular in Saudi Arabia. These are my references, and do you have any question? I'm willing to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Hind, for your incredible presentation.
Thank you.
I'm actually inspired by your work.
Thank you.
Those who work in dialect, I think they help us to keep on track of the changes that happens to the language, especially that language is a living species. Thank you so much.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? Any questions? Please post them in the Q&A. I think there are no questions because your presentation is wonderful. But I have a question, Dr. Hind. Dr.
Yes,
Hind,
please.
do you
Yes.
think it's essential that we include a course in dialects in schools? So that's a way to raise awareness of the importance of dialects and help in keeping these traditions and reserve the language?
Actually, I'm looking forward to have this, and me, my colleague, Dr. Najal Ghamdi, Dr. Dima. I think that we have the same thought that which is the importance of teaching dialects as we are speaking it in the street more. So I think that we are having this voice now too, that dialects are also important, not only the language. Yes, especially in teaching Arabic, if you want to teach Arabic in our university. It's not only the standard because we are not using it in the street.
Yes, of course.
And
I have a question. Do you think that Eastern Gulf dialect is influenced linguistically by the Persian language?
by the what?
The Persian language, Farsi language?
Sorry, they are influenced by? I didn't understand.
This is a question from Randy. So, do you
Yeah,
think that Eastern Gulf dialect is influenced
by the Persian language.
linguistically?
I found a phonetic similar between Eastern. As I mentioned, actually, in my in the rounding literature, that it is found in in Persian language, and of course, because we are very close to together geographically. So yes, especially with the variation in qa and gha. This is from Persian language, the rounding, the nasal, but of course we need more investigation and more research need to be done. But I think yes, especially with mixing with the trade with Persian.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you so much. Any other questions, please? Why the study of dialects of Arabic are marginalized in some departments? What is the importance of working in dialects?
I think that you asked two different questions. Why it is marginalized? Because I think that um, still people, especially who specialize in Arabic, are not ready for the idea that um, teaching dialects is important. We are not talking to just stop teaching Arabic, the standard Arabic. No, let's keep teaching standard Arabic, and beside standard Arabic, let's teach dialects. But some people are, I think that they have this extremist maybe point of view. Yes, but still maybe the change is coming. But I think that no, dialects are important to be taught in our school or universities. What was the other part of your question?
What is the importance? What is the importance of working on dialects?
Many, because I think it's changing. Every day is changing, especially with social with now. The world is different, social media, mixing more with others, even with scholarships. Uh, Dialects are keep changing every day. So I think it's really something tangible, something really beautiful to keep on studying the dialect. You will just keep tracking on the change every day, because you speak differently than your mother or your little sister or someone
Yes.
who in primary one. So I think that yes, it's really interesting.
Another question. So the pull toward the Najdi dialect sounds in the Eastern Gulf region is due mainly to political forces in the kingdom and the rise of social media. Are there any other factors?
Can I just report to the Najdi sound in the Eastern? Not in the Gulf region. I was talking about Saudi Arabia and the political forces in the kingdom and the rise of social media. Um, actually, the social media. I was answering that why it is important to study dialects, but for my research, following the Najdi dialect, because it's the super local. It's It's maybe because it's influenced by the dialect of Riyadh, which is the capital city. So, and Saudi Arabia is a huge country that is full of dialects. Sometimes it's really hard to communicate with your dialect. So it's better to find like اللهجة البيضاء to speak
Yes.
it in public. Yeah, to be also to simplify for other. What are you saying?
Thank you, Dr. Hind. Any other questions to Dr. Hind, please?
Any question?
No coming questions, because I think they asked what's in their mind already. Thank you so much. Are you planning, Dr. Hind, to conduct ethnographic research?
Actually, I'm working on this now. There is a question of Fawaz Ali. There are interesting linguistic phenomena which are not yet there in the standard Arabic. Do
You
you
answered this one, Doctor.
Okay.
You answered this one, Doctor.
Actually, it's
No,
ethnographic. No, I don't think that I answered this.
there are interesting linguistic phenomena which are not there in standards Arabic. Do you agree on this point?
Actually, because my major wasn't in Arabic. So I don't think that I'm the one who will study any of standard Arabic. But my major in PhD was dialect variation and change.
Yeah.
So, but standard Arabic, no, it's not my major. I can't do that. But
how do you identify اللهجة البيضاء
yes, I'm working.
among multiple?
I have an idea of that we can mix some research as for my research was based on mixed method, quantitative and qualitative, and I'm working on also mixing ethnographic one, because while conducting an interview, it's just you are now especially with if you have a group interview, you can immediately see your point of view or how the others or how the other are changing their dialect between me, I'm a stranger, and their family, for example. So I'm working on this.
Excellent. How do you identify اللهجة البيضاء among multiple dialects?
اللهجة البيضاء is like the standard or the supra-local form in any country. It's a standard. Whether the Najdi, in Saudi Arabia, I think that we have two, the Hijazi and the Najdi. Like for example, Ammani in Jordan.
Yeah.
Like the BBC, and I'm not sure of the BBC, but if you will go, for example, to Britain, not popular the people who speak in Scotland or in Ireland, but the most popular one that it is in the south, the dialect of London.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Also, I'd like to thank the committee for all of the efforts, and thank you so much in making a virtual conference too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Hind.
Thank you, Asma.
Thank you all for attending so far. We are now moving to our last presentation for this time round. It's going to be delivered by Dr. Hala Darbani from Prince Sultan University in Saudi Arabia, and she will touch on multimodality along with employment. We look forward to hearing your presentation, Dr. Hala, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Asma, for the introduction. Let me just get my screen working. Can you see my presentation? Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So this is good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Hala Darbani, Associate Professor at Prince Sultan University. I'd like to share with you today my experience using one type of a multimodal project in the teaching of linguistics. And this type of project is digital storytelling. And I want to try to explore how the teaching of such a tool can enhance the skills that graduates will be needing in the workplace, in the job market. So the outline of my presentation, first of all, I'm going to show the background and motivation for the study, then the underlying pedagogical perspectives. Then I'm going to link the art of digital storytelling with the kind of employability skills that students would acquire. And then I'm going to talk about the research tools that I use and my findings, and I'll conclude after that. So first of all, what is a multi-modal project? Now, multi-modal projects are simply projects that have multiple modes of communicating a message. For example, while traditional papers typically only have one mode, which is text, so students had to write or type an assignment. In a multimodal project, students can include a combination of modes. Besides text, they can have images, they can have videos, audios, etc. So usually there are many types of multimodal projects, and digital storytelling is one such example. And what is digital storytelling? Now, it usually consists of a 3 to 5 minute video produced by someone who is not a media professional. And usually it's constructed as a thought piece on a personal experience. Now, I'm going, in view of the importance of employability skills in the workplace today, this study is going to explore the impact of using these multimodal projects on students' acquisition of employability skills. Now, digital storytelling has been in use at Prince Sultan University since 2015 in the form of a multimedia project that students from different levels have to undertake in various linguistics courses. So freshmen, sophomore, junior, senior students do such projects in the courses in intro to linguistics, in the courses in phonetics and phonology, semantics, morphology, sociolinguistics, etc. It requires the students to produce, in my case, 5 to 7 minutes digital narrative of their own linguistic profile, reflecting on their own personal experiences with language. That, of course, not individually, not only about themselves, they can talk about their family members, the circle of friends, community they are in contact with, so that they see the variations in the linguistic variations amongst themselves. Now, students have to incorporate within the story different types of digital multimedia. This is in the rubrics, actually. When they are assessed, they have to have different types of digital multimedia incorporated within the story, like images, like videos, and audios, which is usually their own voice. They usually have a voiceover. Now, this study, as I mentioned earlier, is going to see the impact of this kind of project on the skills that students are acquiring. Now, what do the experts say about the underlying pedagogical perspectives behind such kind of project, digital story? Now, first of all, it's a learner-centered project because it's the students and individual students are doing it. It's not done in a group because it's going to be about the students themselves. So each one will do the story on their own. Excuse me. So it is learner-centered, and it is a project. It's project-based learning because the project is about themselves. So they're going to create a video about themselves, talking about themselves in a form of a project, a video project. It has foundations in the constructivist school of thought, which is about they construct their own meaning. So they're not just cramming and bringing data from here and there. They are also relating meanings that in the literature with the things about themselves. So there is construction of meaning. There's also Gardner's multiple intelligences theory, because it's not just the IQ of the student that is at work. Students will develop their intrapersonal, interpersonal intelligences, their linguistic intelligence, their logical intelligence, etc. And it's also a form of blended learning because it's merging the digital media with traditional forms of teaching. Now, employability skills in the world today. Now, I like the Perkins Collaborative Resource Network because they have identified these skills in this visual. Now, as you can see, there are so many skills that are in demand for the job market today. The ones in red I highlighted most here in the diagram, as you in the visual, if you can see. The critical thinking skills, actually all are important, but critical thinking skills are very important. Students have to learn to think critically, creatively, make sound decisions, solve problems, use reasoning and plan and organize. Of course, it's a course about linguistics and they are using language. So they're going to apply academic skills of reading and writing and speaking and listening and all this stuff. There's interpersonal skills because students are going to interact with one another. Although each project is individual, but students are going to communicate with one another, help one another, share their experiences with one another. There's also a lot of personal qualities that will be developed, like demonstrating responsibility and self-discipline. It's not an easy project, by the way. It's so demanding, although it's only a short video of a couple of minutes, but the amount of effort that has to be put there is immense. So they have to have self-discipline, they have to adapt and be flexible, they are going to work independently, they're going to demonstrate willingness to learn, to have integrity, no plagiarism at all. They need to demonstrate professionalism, take initiative, display positive attitude, and so on, and take responsibility. So personal qualities will certainly be developed. Technology use is at the heart of this project because students usually, when they start doing it for the first time, it's something they've never done before, and it's so reliant on digital media. So they learn a lot on the way. Communication skills, of course, and locating information use. They're going to search for information, locate the relevant information, organize the information in a nice storyline that has a theme. They're going to use information that they find, analyze this information, and then communicate it in the best way possible. There's also some resource management, like managing their time, managing whatever resources they have. So plenty of employability skills at hand. Now, what do what research actually found? Researchers have shown evidence that using digital storytelling enables students to acquire many skills. Now, these are research-based, so it's a unique opportunity for students to acquire and develop a variety of skills like achievement, motivation, engagement in the learning process, originality, imagination, analytical skills, self-expression, self-confidence, self-esteem, communication skills, cultural understanding, tolerance, and social interaction, technology skills, traditional literacy skills, as well as new types of literacy, like information literacy, multicultural literacy, multimedia literacy, visual literacy, technology literacy, media literacy. So lots of literacies here. A clearer sense of self. Now they actually reinforce and encourage, it helps students reinforce and encourage self-development, self-value, self-representation, self-review, self-efficacy, and self-evaluation. A sense of also it helps them to have a sense of authoring and agency, as well as a sense of community belonging. Good inquiry skills, task completion, problem solving, team working, critical evaluation of their own work and of that of their colleagues, of their peers, conceptual skills, research skills, artistic skills, organization or planning skills, interview skills, inductive reasoning skills, decision-making, interpersonal assessment skills, and as you see, the list goes on and on. So immense, it's really a tool that will enhance so many skills of the learners. On top of that, it also has great advantages for EFL learners. Now, EFL learners are using language authentically. They are using it in a context where they are talking about themselves. They're not just talking about what's in the books. So they're going to use writing, reading, listening, and speaking authentically. They are also engaging them in creating, in using and perfecting all the language skills. It provides also the cultural background that is found in languages, the literacy skills, the language development. It helps them also discover their errors and correct their language, because when they do the video, they watch it and they see what errors they have and keep changing and making the necessary changes. It also helps them to learn independently and give them a critical sense of control over their learning of English or whatever language they are using, even Arabic in our case, because students do it on both sometimes. And last but not the least, it helps learners to acquire vocabulary and grammar. So lots of benefits, lots of skills acquired on the way, which the literature has shown evidence of. Now, coming to my investigation, I wanted to research. I've been using digital storytelling as a project in my courses since 2015. I have had so many students doing this project. So I thought, why not try to see what are the skills that my students are acquiring that they'll be needing later on in the job market. So I asked students, after they finish preparing their digital story, to write a self-reflection report on their experience. So these reports were very helpful to me, because I use all the information that I'm going to show you now is extracted from the students' self-evaluation, self-reflection reports. I also analyzed samples of students' digital stories. Now, the first skill that I found, there are 10 of them. So the first and foremost, taking it chronologically, how students, when they first embark on the process of preparing a digital why are research and critical thinking skills important for the job market? Now, they are much needed in any job, because they require learners to analyze a concept objectively, considering the facts and the different perspectives to reach a sound logical conclusion. Now, storytelling in general requires good knowledge of the subject area. They need to know the subject matter very well. They need to have revised their course material very well, the linguistics information. But in such a way, digital storytelling demands from students that they will dig deeper and find resources and literature to help them formulate a reasonable story. Additionally, it requires students to be critical. They are going to watch it and think and reflect and be critical of their own work, motivated by the knowledge that their own work is going to be critically reviewed by their peers and by their instructor. So that puts a lot of, demands a lot of reflection and critical thinking from them. Now, I have some testimonials from students which I've extracted from their self-reflection reports. Like one student said, finding and selecting the content posed a challenge because it had to be relevant to the theme of my story. Another said, I had to find examples to reflect my daily use of language. I found it challenging to connect my usage of language to the topic, for example, of morphology. Yet it helped me focus more on the vast differences in the use of language around me. Now, the second skill that students acquire is problem solving. Now, problem solving is a skill necessary for graduates in any job that they will end up doing. Through digital storytelling, students not only face subject-specific problems, they face technical ones. So this allows them to learn how to look for solutions and how to research ways to achieve what they set out to do, while being free from the realm of their subject area. So this widens their problem-solving tool set beyond linguistics and language use. And this makes them better suited for a job market that will most likely require them to work in a multidisciplinary setting. A student said, I've extracted this from one of the students' reflection reports. Choosing the theme was another challenge. I wanted the theme to be calm and relaxing to the eyes, so I spent time looking for relaxing colors that will fit into my storyline. Choosing the music was another challenge. To find a music track related to both cultures, that is the Arabic and the English, wasn't easy. I chose the oud musical instrument to connect both cultures. Another student said, I faced some challenges regarding what software works with the flow of my ideas and how to gather them in a digital story. So lots of problem solving on the way. The third skill is the decision-making skill. Decision-making is an integral part of a leader's role in the workplace, but you don't have to be a leader to have the ability to, you need it whether you are a leader or not, decision-making. It's the ability to think objectively, to relate concepts to goals, and to make decisions that have positive impact on one's project or whatever they are doing as a whole. So from our findings, it was evident that digital storytelling enables students to learn about making tough decisions. For example, students were asking, I'll show you, like one of the students said, at the beginning, I had no sense of direction to what I wanted my theme to be, or how the structure would be, or what kind of personal details I was going to include or to share. Deciding on the relevant course materials to be included was challenging. The challenge I faced was trying to arrange my slides in a sequence. It took me some time to think where to put each until I arrived at the right logical order. So lots of decisions. Students were asking me, Doctor, what do I include in my story? How do I start it? What is the first thing my viewers, would you think my viewers want to see? What kind of music shall I use? What kind of visuals shall I use? So lots of decisions to be made on the way. The fourth skill is the creative thinking skills. I'm sure these skills overlap at times, but I try to put them in categories like this for ease of demonstration. So creative thinking is the ability to look for things differently and find new ways of solving problems. And now digital storytelling provided my students with the ability to learn how to think out of the box while also enjoying the experience. Students also described that their motivation to be creative was due to the untraditional nature of the digital story. So one student said, I like doing the project because it was fun and interesting. It was not like any other project. In this project, I had the freedom to be creative with what I'm doing while learning. I enjoyed doing it because it did not feel like I was doing an assignment for the university. Another student said it was a great experience doing the digital story. It's a more creative way to do any project. It keeps students motivated to do it, and it brings students closer to one another, that is. Another tool, another skill, is the communication and literacy. Communication is everywhere. So both written and oral communication skills are essential to in achieving productivity and maintaining strong working relationships at all levels in any job, in any organization. And of course, team building is really all about how those team members communicate and collaborate with one another. So through digital storytelling, the students I surveyed made it clear that this tool enabled them to condense large amounts of information in an effective medium that could be communicated to others, besides the fact that they had to work hard towards improving their writing and presentation skills. So, for example, one student said, getting ideas and organizing my content while fitting it into a story that is coherent was the biggest obstacle I faced. I spent weeks writing my story just to make sure it was connected. My story had to be short, accurate, convincing, clear, and entertaining. And unless all are met, it won't be an effective one. So you see how aware they were of the importance of effective communication across through the digital story. The sixth skill is collaboration. Collaboration is a key factor in any workplace success. It improves the quality and speed by which work is done. It will heighten the overall productivity. It was clear from my study of the self-reflection reports that the level of discussion that is involved with the process of creating a digital story resulted in better collaboration skills amongst the students. The digital story creation process and the technical difficulties, especially the technical difficulties that they encountered, forced them into a collaborative environment. This was topped off by the fact that they were comparing each other's work and realizing the potential of collaborating with each other. So this is very important. Yes.
So shall I remind you of the time? Can you please wrap up so we have time for questions, please?
Yes, okay. So I just got one student. I wasn't sure what to include. I was confused until I discussed some of the course materials that my colleagues were including in their stories. Now, the seventh is the intercultural awareness. And as you all know, we are in a global world, and students are going to meet to work in diverse companies. So diverse understanding their own culture and that of the other is very important. And this digital story actually really helped in that, because students come from different backgrounds, from different regions, from different cultures and subcultures, and they exchange all that with one another. So one student said, seeing all of my friends' digital stories, I realized that there were so many things that I didn't know about them. It was as if we were getting to know each other all over again. But this time with more details about their backgrounds and origins. It was a very enriching experience at both the academic and the social level. Now, digital literacy, I need not to tell you about the value of digital literacy in the world today, especially with COVID-19. So before COVID-19, it was important. It's even more important now. And students said, I began the project with basic technology skills, but now I gain experience and can work with audio and video clips and other tools that I can use in the future. I gladly make other videos now, and so on and so forth. And we need not forget the main reason behind the digital story in the first place was to achieve the learning outcome of the course, which was the linguistic knowledge. I wanted the students to learn about their course material as well. So they had to include the linguistic information within those stories. So actually one of them said, overall, my digital story has been more than a great experience. I've learned so much about my linguistics course materials. In addition, I've learned a lot about myself. So they were comparing English and Arabic. They were going back to their family members, comparing what each member of the family, what kind of words they use, the slang they use, the pronunciation, etc., etc. So this has really reinforced the learning of the linguistics courses. And the last but not the least is their self-confidence, their sense of self-confidence, pride, and achievement. Confidence is knowing what you are good at, the value you provide, and acting in a way that conveys that to those what you're good at to those around you. And this storytelling actually, quoting the students' words, it was clear to me that the students shared an immense sense of pride and achievement. I could see that on the day when they're making their presentations in front of their colleagues in the classroom. But that was not all of it. They were also sharing it with their family members and seeing how proud their family members were. You can see here, making a digital story was the best project I've ever done. It surely takes a lot of time and effort to make it, but it's worth it because the feelings I had after finishing it, the feeling of pride that I had done something new to me and about me was immense. It was an amazing feeling to show the video to my family members and see how proud they were, etc., etc. So in conclusion, I'd like to conclude by showing that the self-reflection reports that I have went through actually was evidence that my students were engaging in a meaningful, dynamic, authentic content, and lots of knowledge about Arabic, English culture, and some of them who knew another language like French or whatever language, they also included that. So they learned about also not only the linguistic features of the languages they know, but also about the culture embedded in them. They also developed their technical skills. They developed their traditional and digital literacy. They enhanced their research, creative, and critical thinking skills. They strengthened their team spirit and sense of diversity. They also delivered a project that heightened their feeling of accomplishment and self-esteem. It facilitated, of course, lifelong learning because now they know the tools, they know how to do anything if they were asked to, and it enabled them to look into themselves and discover who they are and what they can do. So one last student quotation, this whole experience was full of educational benefits and will definitely be handy in the future when we go to work, and which is the theme of my presentation, is to link all the skills that they have acquired from this story to the workplace, how it's going to feed into the workplace. And if you would like, I was hoping that we had the time to show you samples, amazing samples of students' work. And many of my students were so pleased that they showcase their work on YouTube. So here you have 2 links to 2 videos produced by my students that are uploaded on YouTube that you can watch in your own time. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hala, for this enlightening presentation. You touched on a very serious matter as we look forward to connect our students with reality and the labor market and help them to develop and enjoy their time learning. I have so many comments in the chat telling you that this is amazing and brilliant, and I agree with them. I think you touched on every aspect, including any potential questions that our attendees may have. Any question, please, Dr. Hala? Attendees would like to thank you, Doctor, for your inspiring session, actually.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
I would just like to add here that I have used Dr. Hala's digital story in my classrooms, and it was very successful. I attended one of her sessions at Prince Sultan, and it really inspired me, and I started it right away. And it was very helpful and very useful in my class. And thank you, Dr. Hala.
Oh, thank you, Maria. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you very much.
So now we are at the very end of our session. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to have you at 6:30 for the workshop on artificial intelligence and natural language processing. Thank you all, and thanks to Applied Linguistics Research Lab for organizing such an amazing symposium. See you all, inshallah, in 1 hour and a half.
Thank you. Bye.